What is actually the real reason you overthink everything and why you can't stop thinking and start living? This is actually the focus of today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Grow with Aziza. Let me ask you something. Have you ever spent hours thinking about a decision only to end up exactly where you started? Maybe you were deciding whether to apply for a new job, whether to end a relationship, whether to start a business, or maybe to speak up in a meeting, or to make a change in your life. You think about the decision while driving. You think about it before sleeping. You think about it while working. You replay scenarios in your head. You imagine every possible outcome. You analyze every detail. And somehow, after all that thinking, you still don't know what to do. Well, if that sounds familiar, I'm here to tell you you are not alone. A lot of people actually struggle with overthinking. In fact, how to stop overthinking is one of the most searched personal development topics in the world. People actually search for things like why do I overthink everything? How do I stop overthinking? Why can't I stop worrying? How do I quiet my mind? But what if overthinking is not actually the real problem? What if overthinking is simply a symptom of something deeper? Because the more I have observed people, and honestly, the more I have observed myself, the more I have realized something. Most people actually don't overthink because they love thinking. No, no, no. They actually overthink because they are afraid. And that is what I want to talk about today. The real reason you overthink everything. When people talk about overthinking, they often describe it as thinking too much. But I don't think that is completely accurate. Overthinking actually is not just thinking, it is thinking without moving. It is getting stuck somewhere. It is repeatedly visiting the same thoughts without reaching a decision. And usually there is a reason for that. Think about a time when you made a simple decision, maybe what to eat for dinner. You probably did not spend 3 days analyzing it, right? Why? Because the decision did not feel threatening. But when a decision feels important, something changes. Suddenly, your brain starts searching for certainty. It wants guarantees. It wants proof. It wants to know exactly what will happen before you take action. And that is where overthinking begins. I think one of the biggest reasons people overthink is because they are afraid of making the wrong choice. They think stuff like, what if I choose the wrong job? What if I choose the wrong partner? What if I make the wrong investment? What if I regret this later? So instead of making a decision, they stay in analysis mode because staying undecided feels safer. As long as you don't choose, you can't make a mistake. At least that is what your brain tells you. But there is a problem. Not deciding is also a decision. And sometimes the cost of waiting becomes much bigger than the cost of making a mistake. Something interesting happens when we overthink. We convince ourselves that more thinking will solve the problem. So we keep analyzing, we keep researching, we keep imagining, we keep preparing, but often we are not actually searching for answers. We are searching for certainty. And certainty is something life rarely gives us. No successful person had complete certainty. You need to remember that. No successful person had complete certainty. No entrepreneur had complete certainty. No confident person had complete certainty. So, what do? They act before they have all the answers. And that is what overthinkers struggle with, taking action before feeling completely ready. You got me, right? So, what you need to do is that you need to act. You need to act before you feel ready. Really, you need to do that. Another reason people overthink is fear of judgment. This actually connects us to what we discussed in the previous episode, because in the previous episode we talked about fear of judgment. Sometimes we are not actually worried about making the wrong decision. We are actually worried about making the wrong decision publicly. We are worried about what people will think, what people will say, how they will react. So we keep replaying scenarios, trying to avoid criticism, trying to avoid embarrassment, trying to avoid looking foolish. But the more we try to avoid discomfort, the more trapped we become. I think one of the most exhausting things about overthinking is that it creates problems that don't even exist yet. You imagine conversations that never happen. You imagine arguments that never happen. You imagine failures that never happen. You imagine rejections that never happen. You spend energy fighting imaginary battles, and by the time the real moment arrives, you are already mentally exhausted. Have you ever noticed that? Sometimes the thing you are worried about for weeks ends up being much easier than you expected, yet you suffered through it 100 times in your mind beforehand. That is what overthinking does. It makes you experience problems multiple times before they even exist. Now, here is the truth that changed everything for me. Overthinking is often an attempt to control uncertainty. That is really what is happening. Your brain thinks stuff like, if I think about this long enough, I will find the perfect answer. If I analyze every possibility, I will avoid mistakes. If I prepare for every outcome, I will be safe. But life doesn't actually work that way. There are no perfect answers. There are no guarantees. There is no way to completely eliminate uncertainty. And the sooner we accept that, the sooner we start living. One thing I have actually noticed about confident people is that they are not necessarily better decision makers. They are simply more comfortable with uncertainty. They understand that mistakes are part of life. They understand that not every decision will be perfect. They understand that growth requires risk. And because they accept uncertainty, they spend less time trapped inside their heads. So, how do we stop overthinking? Well, not by trying to force our thoughts away, not by pretending we don't care, and not by waiting until we feel certain. Well, the real solution is learning to trust yourself. Trusting that even if you make the wrong choice, you will figure it out. trusting that even if things don't go according to plan, you will adapt. Trusting that you are capable of handling challenges when they come. Because when you trust yourself, you stop needing guarantees. And when you stop needing guarantees, overthinking loses much of its power. One question that helps me whenever I catch myself overthinking is this: am I trying to solve a problem or am I trying to eliminate uncertainty? Because those are two different things. If you are solving a problem, great, keep thinking. But if you are trying to guarantee a perfect outcome, you will be stuck forever. Sometimes the next step becomes clear only after you take it, not before. So, if you have been overthinking lately, I want you to remember this. The goal is not to stop thinking. Thinking is actually useful, but the goal is to stop using thinking as a substitute for action because clarity often comes from action. Confidence comes from action. Experience comes from action. And life is lived through action, not endless analysis. At the end of the day, the real reason you overthink everything is not because you are broken. It is usually because you are trying to protect yourself. You are trying to avoid failure. You are trying to avoid judgment. You are trying to avoid mistakes. You are trying to avoid uncertainty. But in doing so, you also avoid growth. And maybe the answer is not to think more. Maybe the answer is to trust yourself enough to take the next step, even when you don't have all the answers. And remember, you don't need complete certainty to move forward. You only need enough courage to take the next step. So, yeah, this is basically everything I thought of sharing in today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. And if you have other topics that you want me to focus on, please let me know down below in the comments. So, yeah, by the way, please consider subscribing to the channel so you won't miss any of the future episodes. So, yeah, this is basically everything. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next episode. Have a great day and take care. Bye bye.